There she is.
Sorry, I'm late.
Hey, Vix.
Hi, Vix.
Hello.
How are you doing?
I'm fine. Bit anxious.
Oh, don't be. It's funny because I think it was Amy's channel the first time I ever went live ever.
Yeah,
And I
same.
was like 3 days before and I was like starting to freak out. But it turned out to be completely fine. And now I do lives like every week.
It becomes really addictive, and it just feels to me like a conversation. Like I forget that people are watching, and I'm sure you'll do the same, Vix. You'll just get talking about the book, and then that's it. You kind of get carried away because you know the subject. It's not like we're going to ask you about, I don't know, astrophysics or anything.
Well, and I find sprints are really good too, number one, because I actually think I do get things done. And then, it's kind of nice because you have other people that are doing things and you know that there's going to be a chat coming up. So it just kind of flows like those Sunday morning sprints that I started doing. Have been going really well. There's been a ton of people on there. So I thought it was going to be too early, not for you guys over in the UK, obviously, but I thought it was going to be too early, but it's been going really, really well.
I love Sunday
it's a good
sprints.
day to do. Sorry, what are you saying, Vix?
Sunday sprints are brilliant for me.
Hey, Sharon. Thank you so much for joining. Hi, everybody. I can see a couple people trickling in. So we're just going to give a couple of minutes here for people to hop on. We've just been chatting in the background. And so I think what we'll do is, Vix, I was just telling the other guys, probably what we'll do a little bit of introduction first. Everybody can introduce their channels, and then probably a little bit of overall conversation about the book, and then get into some specifics. I know like the reviews of this one have been kind of all over the place, so it'll be interesting to see what other people have to say too. Good morning, Jackie, or good evening, I guess, from the UK where Vix and Amy are. I actually read Phantom of the Opera like right at the beginning of what book was this? January, right at the beginning of January. And so I found I had to like read kind of like a book summary this morning just to refresh it in my head. I don't know. Do you guys find this, that we read so much that like after you move on to other things, like the specifics kind of move out of your head?
Yep, 100%. I just picked this up beforehand and went, what are they all called again? Because I couldn't remember any of their names.
It's okay. I can't remember half the names of the characters either. I should have went through my darts that I have in the book.
Yeah, that's why I wanted. It was quite easy actually to find a synopsis, like a summary, I guess, online of this one. I didn't get to do a watch party because I really wanted to do a watch party. Maybe we'll just schedule it anyway coming up here because I had been working so much overtime at work. The month just got away from me. So, okay. So I'm sure people will trickle in. There's a couple of people online. Make sure you guys jump in and say hello. So welcome everybody. So super excited to have all of these guys on here chatting about Phantom. This was a couple of weeks that I got bumped because of, I was sick on one weekend and then people had other things going on. So we finally found a time. It's been a little while. So I know we all had to kind of review and get our heads wrapped around the book again. So what we'll do is we'll do a little bit of a round table. Everybody can introduce their channels and then we'll hop into the book. So Edie Lewis, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your channel?
Hi, I'm Edie Lewis. I review horror books mostly, a little bit of gothic, and been going on 4.5 years.
Oh, wow.
I'm not really sure what else to say.
Yeah, I found Edie's channel from, I think probably because you do so many vampire books, actually, and that's something that we really connect on. We're both like super Buffy fans. Amy is a super Buffy fan as well. Yeah. And so, I think the vampire thing was the first connection. And then we both loved Gothic literature. And then last year, of course, we were both involved in the Gothic Hearts Reading Challenge, and then it just kind of carried on from there. So we've had a good friendship ever since. So Amy, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. So I am Emma McCaw. I'm the author of the Mina books, which is also the vampire connection between all of us. So I love reading and writing vampire books. I review mostly YA books on my channel, but there's definitely a vampire slant. If it's a vampire book, I've probably reviewed it. And I've also read a lot of adult horror recently. I seem to be leaning quite far in that direction. So maybe I'll write some of that too at some point. So yeah, you can find my channel under Amy McCaw, and I'm Amy McCaw on most social media.
Perfect. Yeah, and the new Mina book is going to be out
Yay.
before we know it, coming up in April.
Yeah, I can't actually believe it because we agreed to leave 18 months between books just because I can't write any faster because I have a day job and a small child. So it seems like it's forever between books, and yet this one is coming around really fast. Like I feel like I was just in bookshops promoting the last one, and then this one's coming out. She says in a really high voice because it's really exciting, but it's really nerve-wracking too because not that many people have read it at this point because like for the first 2 books we did proofs, but by the 3rd book in the series, like it's kind of not worth doing proofs just because people, they're either with it and they're invested or they're not by that point. It's, you know. Yeah. So yeah, people will basically get it when they pre-order it. There'll be a few early copies, I think, but not many. So yeah, that'll be it when it comes out. It's too late then, isn't it, to see what people think. But I think the stuff
I wouldn't turn down an early copy, hint, hint.
I mean, I'll see what I can do. But yeah, there's some stuff in there that I won't say what it is, but there's a couple of, I mean, cults, obviously, but it goes in a couple of other weird directions that I think you'll enjoy, hopefully.
I'm very, very much looking forward to it. And Vix, tell us a little bit about your channel.
Hello, I am Vix. I read all genres of books. I tend to stay the darker side, though, if I can, but I do like cozy things as well. I'm currently still on Booktube, but my channel isn't active at the minute. I'm having a little break down. But yeah, that's it, I think.
Yeah, and guys, even though Vix is on a little bit of a hiatus, make sure you go check out her channel because I've gotten so many recommendations from her of books that I haven't heard of before, like everything from fantasy, sci-fi, horror, thrillers, cozy mysteries, everything. So I believe I have everybody's links in the description box. I will double check it, but I believe I put everybody's links in here. So make sure to go out and check out everybody's channel. Hopping into some comments here. The moment I finish a book, I usually forget everything. Yeah, I think we're all on the same page of that because it's like, you know, somebody will ask me about a book and I'm like, I have no idea. I don't know. I can't tell you about it. I can tell you if I liked it or I didn't like it pretty much about a month later. Hey, Amanda, thanks so much for hopping in. And some love for Mina, of course. I love the series too. And, you know, the second book, the first book I liked, but the second one, like after we got into developing that whole story, I absolutely loved it. So really, really looking forward to the third one. So today we are discussing Phantom of the Opera. So for me, this is my first time reading it. It's been something that I've wanted to read for years and years, and I've seen like 3 adaptations, I think. Of like musical kind of versions, and then I saw it on Broadway, of course, as well, when they did Broadway across Canada here, which was super awesome to see it live. It was really quite fantastic, and I had the CD of Andrew Lloyd Webber's score like ever since I was a child. I absolutely loved it, so I was all about Phantom. So really, really glad that I got to read it finally. So just some overall thoughts. I'll start, and then we'll do a little bit of a roundtable. So I gave this book, I'm kind of stuck. I don't know if I want to give it like a 2.5 or a 3, because for me personally, I found it really hard to get into at the beginning. Once the story kind of started to get going and we sort of found out what was going on and things, the action sort of picked up, I found it a lot easier to read. But I think one of the things for me personally, because I love the musical so much, is that when you're doing a story like this about an opera house and dancers and all of that, it's almost like a whole element was missing. The music was missing, the dancing was missing, you know, all of that. So I found it a little bit difficult. And like I said, I found it a little bit hard to get into. So overall, I'm glad I read it. I somewhat enjoyed it once it started to get going towards the end, but it also wasn't fantastic for me. So, Edie, what were your thoughts?
Well, this is my second time reading it. I'd read it a long time ago, but there's a lot of stuff I actually had forgotten. I did find some things a little harder to read this time around, particularly with a few of the characters. And I mean, some parts I think I found like amusing that I didn't find the first time around, because I was literally laughing at some of the parts, some of the antics. But I don't know what I would. I feel like I need to change my rating, because I think I gave it a 4-star originally. I might drop it down like maybe a star, half star. I'm not sure.
Amy, what did you think?
So I don't really star rate books. I just kind of go on the overall feel of them. And this one I was really torn. Like, you said that the reviews were mixed. I feel mixed within my own head. Like, normally I feel quite decisive about a book. And this one, I came away like, did I actually like it? I'm not really sure. And I think what I was surprised about, I haven't watched any versions of it. I don't really know the music that well. I kind of knew the premise, so I went into it a bit unknowing, and it kind of wasn't what I expected. I expected to engage more with the romance. I normally love, as you know, like horror with a side of romance or something is my jam. And the romance was the bit I wasn't that keen on. I didn't feel like, I know a lot of it, the plot was tied to it, but they were the bits I didn't enjoy as much. I enjoyed the horror and we can talk spoilers here, can't we?
Yes.
Yeah, good. The kind of going into the torture chamber bit, which I found kind of confusing. It was sort of mental. I was like all ready for kind of torture equipment and stuff. But mental torture is fine too, I guess. But they were the bits I enjoyed, like the dark stumbling through a scary theatre atmosphere. I thought those bits were really strong. And then there were bits where I felt like it just meandered and I didn't know what was going on. And I wondered part of that could be to do with the translation, because I think, was this originally written in
French?
Yeah. So, and sometimes you wonder whether the translator has captured all the atmosphere of the original version, or whether it's whether their own style of writing shines through, or because some bits of it, the wording I felt just didn't flow, and I thought, is this trying to capture somebody else's atmosphere?
Well, and I think that's just in general with translated works, that happens sometimes. I haven't read a whole lot of translated works, but I'm sure that if you were to read it in French and you were fluent, you probably would get a little bit more of that atmosphere for sure. Vix, what were your overall thoughts?
I had to double check what rating I gave it. I gave it 3.5 stars. Thought it was interesting. I've never watched any adaptation of it, never watched the musical. I did try and watch the musical after I'd read it, because I was interested in what they did with it, because I know it's not a strict word for word thing. So I wanted to know what the differences was. I couldn't make it all the way through. Stopped it halfway. Enough of that music. Singing and dancing and stuff. It was a weird little tale, but I did, like Amy, I loved it once he'd kidnapped her and took her away and all that stuff. I don't know. There was just a lot of mild racism.
Just calling a character the Persian, like
yeah.
As soon as I saw that, I was just, oh yeah, okay.
He's ugly and things like that. You could never get away with things like that at all.
But I mean, when was this written? 1800s? 1880, I think. For some reason, 1880 is sticking out in my head. I'm not really too sure, but I think it was late 1800s. So, I mean, I think we're all pretty much in agreement. I know there was Phantom.
Yeah, 1909.
Oh, okay. Well, LaRue's most enduring works, of course, found the author, which was first published in 1910. At least that's what everyone says.
But I did do a little snoop deep dive to find out that it was a flop when it was originally published. And it was only once it had been sold to be a silent film that more interest took off. But it wasn't a strict adaptation as a silent film either. So they'd changed it. People got interested and then they got to the book. And I think it was still a flop. It wasn't wasn't what they expected.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
Did they
So
need
that's
androids?
interesting, actually, that it was a flop back in the day.
Mm.
Sharon says, I read Phantom 10 years ago, but remember it. So this was, saw the original show on West End in London. My roommate
wow.
was.
Oh, wow.
Oh, that's really cool. I love, I don't know if anybody follows any kind of costume tube, but I like watching Bernadette Banner. She has a really big
Yeah.
channel and she makes like all these different really elaborate costumes and period pieces and stuff. So that's really cool. Translated books are difficult. I don't think I have a rating for this book. I'm glad I read it, but we'll never read it again. Or doubtful I'll read it again. And I feel the same way. Like, I'm glad I finally got to it. But for me, as someone who loves musicals and plays and stuff like that, that for me is like Phantom of the Opera, personally. It's problematic now, but at its time. But of its time, enjoy the horror elements, not the romance. So, okay, so let's, another lover of Bernadette. Yay. So, let's get into a little bit of the characters, because I really hated some of the characters. So first of all, I'm really glad that Phantom in the original story was actually more of a horror character. Like, when you look at the adaptations that they did, he's disfigured and stuff, but we're talking about somebody that has like a skeletal appearance with like fiery eyes and stuff like that. So when I know, for me personally, like, I used to be in dance and used to do plays in theater and stuff when I was a child, and those theaters, like, when they're dark and nobody's in them, really, like, there's no audience or anything, they can be quite scary. So if you're kind of putting this character in this sort of atmosphere of this dark theater, and you find out that he was actually one of the ones that built some of the tunnels, and you can just imagine his thought process of incorporating that into this spooky old theater. So I really liked that element of like the horror. But on the other hand, I really didn't like Christine. I get it. I understand that she was supposed to be like the damsel, and women at the time weren't really going to be thought of as smart or strong or anything like that. And I don't know if it was just the medium that I was reading the book in, because I read it on audio and I found her quite annoying. That's just me personally. And then for Rowell as well, and I find they do this with some classics when they adapt them for more modern audiences. They'll usually leave their how mean they are in the background, and they just focus on the romance. And I'm like, oh, he wasn't really that nice. Like, he doubted her. He thought she was, inviting men into her dressing room, and that she was like not a chaste woman, I guess you would say, or whatever. But so I had a problem with him, and I had a problem with her, and I really think there could have been more character development. There could have been a little bit more going on there. So that's just my thoughts. I mean, what do you guys think about character?
I thought the theatre was the most interesting character, like, as a setting and the atmosphere. I felt the characters a little flat. I thought Eric was the most interesting character, in my opinion, and I enjoyed seeing the layers of him through the books. I think I'd seen through the Hollywood lens, I'd seen snippets of, like, handsome man with mask, or handsome man with mild prosthetics or something. So I liked the kind of horror element of him, like you said. And I found Raoul and Christine kind of super annoying. I could have done without them, to be honest. Like, I feel like maybe he could have been doing something else rather than kidnapping a girl, because I don't think they added that much. And I thought the bits with them, really, the pace really suffered. I didn't really understand either of them, why they were how they were, or what their background was. And I didn't feel like they had any depth, whereas Eric, I did. I felt all of that depth. And the theatre characters too, I was a bit disappointed, like, this kind of supporting it's quite a big supporting cast, and they were very light touch in terms of characterization as well. Like, I couldn't really imagine, is it Madame Geary and the managers of the theatre, like, they could have been a bit more kind of painted more lifelike. They were just like they were 2D characters in a backdrop in a theatre rather than actual people. So yeah, I think for me the characterization was one of the weaker parts of it.
I definitely liked Madame Geary. She was my favourite character, I think. Just this little old lady coming in. You got to pay him.
Keep box 5 empty.
Yeah, or else.
Is that Minnie Driver in the film? I think I looked up who played all the characters. Was it Minnie Driver? I was trying to work out who they all were.
In the 2004 one that came out, I can't remember her
Oh
name.
no, it was Minnie Driver, the diva, I think. I don't know.
She was the diva, yes.
Yeah.
Carlotta, who he
made her
made
quite
sick so Christine could perform.
That bit was quite funny. I don't know whether that was one of the bits you left at ED, but I just found it like I was trying to imagine what
the
this
stuff with the manager I actually was laughing at. That and the stuff with the managers, which were like very caricature.
Yeah.
Characters. Like and Christine, yeah, I understand. Yeah, I with the annoying part, she was also very shallow.
Very shallow.
I don't remember her being so when I first read it, but I'm just like, maybe it's a different lens now. But yeah, and Raoul, I kind of feel the same way that I felt about it. I never like his character in any, not even in any adaptation, do I really like his character. But,
well, and it's like, you know, with her especially, did they want her to paint her as a ditz back then? Because she was just, you know, we all know that back in the day, theater performers weren't really considered to be the best type of women to hang out with, I guess you would say, which is why Raoul's brother, I guess, was giving him such a hard time too, because she was a theater girl, you know, but I don't know, she just really didn't do it for me. She really didn't. And I know Sharon, I just saw Sharon's comment pop up here and it said she needed a slap.
I don't know. I sometimes wonder, like, is that a perception of what men in the day want?
Yes.
Like, did the author think that men wanted a damsel that they could rescue who was kind of
probably
weak in mind and thought and kind of character, that, you know, just a pretty thing that they can own and control?
You got to give her a due. She did kind of think that she could dupe Eric at the end.
Yeah, she tried.
She tried. Yes, she did. You know, I really liked the end, like once they started getting into the tunnels and the torture chamber and all of that kind of stuff. I really did enjoy it, but I think it did have pacing problems and no character development. The romance wasn't really there. I wasn't really feeling it between Raoul and Christine. So it was kind of like you had to slog through all of this stuff to get to like the main bit, right? And yeah, theaters are creepy out of hours, lots of shadows, curtains, all of that kind of stuff. So I did actually really enjoy that element, and it sounds like everybody else did as well. Eric was by far the most interesting. Raoul annoyed me. He was so whiny. And I think, okay, so I'm glad it wasn't just me, because, you know, I know you guys, especially Edie and Amy, I know you guys are a little bit more with the romance. And sometimes I do get really annoyed with romance in books, but this was particularly annoying. So I'm glad it's not just me. I don't mind unlikable characters as long as there's great character development, but this didn't have it. No, it really didn't. It was super, super lacking. So, you know, I think a lot of us are pretty much on the same page. I know a couple of people in the Discord did give this upwards of 5 stars, which I don't think any of them are on right now, but, you know, I would be interested to hear their take as well. You know, is it just kind of based on when we started getting to those latter parts of the book? So can we talk about for a minute grooming, I guess you would say? Because we have this, I mean, is Christine's age discussed? I don't think it really is, but I think she's very much a young woman.
Yeah, I kind of got the teenage impression. I don't know, like late teens or something. I don't know.
I would say that, yeah. And, you know, so you have this older man who's basically, you know, using the idea of the angel of music from when she was a child to kind of coax her into developing a relationship with him. I mean, did we all feel that?
Yes.
Yeah, and the death of her dad as well, he was using at the end, wasn't he? Something in the graveyard with her dad. She was going to see her dad again or something.
Yeah.
Scenes too.
Yeah, so Amanda's saying, was Christine brainwashed by Phantom? That's what it felt like. And I would absolutely agree with that. You know, like you say, you have this young woman and her father has died when she's young, and this idea of this angel of music who's going to make her a prodigy was used to have her basically fall in love with a man who she never would have loved. And she never would have had anything to do with. And then I think it was almost that, and this would have been taboo back in the day as well, of this voyeuristic, like he would come to her in her dressing room and like take her through the mirror. So it was all very creepy. I definitely got the creep factor.
Yeah, I feel like that's one that was intended to be creepy back in the day as well. I don't think anybody at that point would have been saying that was a good thing. And I just found it even worse, like not just the grooming, but the fact that it exploited something that was so personal and kind of precious to her, like this tie with her father and a thing she really strongly believed in, and that was so important that she wanted to be something special in terms of her talent and her art. To use that against her made it even worse, I think, somehow.
Yeah. So the creep factor was definitely there with this spooky guy. That's definitely more spooky in the book than he is in any adaptation that I've seen anyway. Like you say, like a good looking man with prosthetics, and he just wears the mask on the top of his face. So that was definitely there as well. Hey, Em, thanks so much for joining. She was vulnerable, and she was daft.
Yeah.
She's definitely easy prey. And then even to the point where he put a ring on her finger and said basically, like, you're not allowed to marry anybody. Like, that can really, especially because he was the one that paved the way for her to become, you know, I guess famous or whatever within her company of singers and dancers. You know, that's some heavy, like, emotional manipulation there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't hate it though. I actually do enjoy Phantom of the Opera for the atmosphere, but definitely not for the characters. Yeah. And I think, like I say, for me personally, like without Andrew Lloyd Webber's score, which actually did, and I think that's the thing probably, is when it was turned into a musical, it actually rounded things out a little bit better, because it had, like, even if you like musicals or not, it added a little bit to the story, even though, you know, not a lot of people like the singing and dancing. But it probably took a story that was a little bit of a slog and kind of a flop back in the day and built it out into something that was a little bit better. But I
definitely want to watch it. I like a musical.
It was definitely for the atmosphere.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Sorry, what were you saying? I think there's, like, you know, that awkward, like,
I'm just agreeing. It's definitely atmospheric. You can't say that the book isn't atmospheric. It's, you know, it's definitely a gothic horror.
So would we actually put this in, like, talking about what you would consider horror? I know it's characterized as a gothic horror, but what, like, for me personally, I don't know if I would put it in the horror.
I wouldn't put it in horror today, but I think as a horror in the early 1900s, I'd say definitely 100%.
Horror of the time.
Yeah, completely agree. Similar to Dracula, like when you compare Dracula's horror to modern standards of horror, moments that are very, very creepy. But I think for me, that's as far as it goes. Whereas to audiences of that time who are less familiar with this kind of figure, in a novel format anyway, I know there's the Penny Dreadfuls and things. I can't remember what time period they were from. But I think that, modern audiences wouldn't find it as scary as some of the stuff that we contend with.
No, but definitely back then, you know, especially even just talking about the character of Phantom himself and how scary his appearance would have been. And I mean, back in the day was when obviously there was very little TV. And well, I mean, there was no TV back then. There was no social media. There was no nothing. So, like, a lot of people went to theaters, right? So having this spooky guy in basically the one place where you would get entertainment back.
I mean, the build-up of the book is that there's a ghost.
There's a ghost
in the theatre, and for all intents and purposes, there is a ghost because he's never seen, he's only heard, leaves little snippets around. There is a ghost in the theatre, so it's got to be horror if there's a ghost.
True. Yeah.
And then he's portrayed as a monster because he's ugly and disabled.
Mm-hmm.
Monster.
So I mean, like with a lot of things back then, it would have been, you know, like I don't even want to use the term, but like the sideshow freak kind of character. And in the 2004 adaptation, that's actually what they made him into. He was basically like a circus performer. And I believe it was Madame Giry who broke him out of there when she was younger. I think that's how they put the spin on it. And then she brought him into the theater where he lived in the spooky caverns. So I mean, we have a lot to contend there with disabilities, disfigurement, racism, the portrayal of women, grooming. So there's a lot of themes here that are really difficult overall to be reading in modern times. So there was a lot of that. And when you have a lot of that and not a super strong story, for me, then it kind of failed for me a little bit. So, because I know like Wuthering Heights is one of my favorite Gothic books, but it's super problematic. Super problematic. But
what do you mean? Is that not aspirational? Women everywhere need a Heathcliff, don't they?
Definitely.
As a teenager, though, it's so funny reading it as a teen. I did have that weird experience of finding it more appealing than I do as an adult now. Like, I think at the time that was a bit more sexy and romantic than.
Yeah, the ideas of what we thought about as being romantic as teenagers or children definitely differs when you get into, you know, upper years for sure. But like comparing these two, both are problematic stories, but Wuthering Heights, I found it had the character development, it had the, you know, tugging at the heartstrings, and I cry at the end of the 1930s version every time I see it. But this one just, I don't know, it didn't have it for me, so I was super disappointed. Character development is most important, absolutely. It is Gothic horror lit of its era, but quite late for true Gothic, which was Victorian more than this, which is Edwardian, especially. Yeah, so I mean, anything after I think 1902 would be considered Edwardian. So this is definitely outside of that sort of Victorian time sphere. The Phantom is characterized as a monster simply because he's disfigured, so that just speaks of the time it was written. Absolutely. So again, you know, somebody being a monster because they have a disability wasn't taboo back then, but it's kind of difficult to read this day and age. And, you know, I'm sure everyone felt this, like, you kind of feel sorry for him, but he's also like not even talking about the disfigurement, but like just mentally, like the way he's grooming this young woman and everything. So he's a monster in that way, but you also feel sorry for him.
He just casually kills people too, doesn't he? Like, I feel like it's quite brushed aside in the book. Like sometimes I like to read it back, it's like, wait, is it just saying like he really casually murdered someone for coming near his house? And I don't know whether it's because of the time, and maybe editors were just like, it just gloss over that. Yeah, he's just a casual murderer too.
Casual murderer, yeah. But again, you still feel sorry for him in a way. Not a good representation of disabled people, obviously, has to do with the time period that it was written, early 1900s for sure. Penny Dreadful's 1880s to 90s. Okay.
Thank you, Sharon. I was just trying to work that in my head. I was like, I'm sure it's Victorian, but I was like, the Victorian period's really long, right? Because Victoria lived a long time. Yeah, I need to get hold of some, Sharon. I'm not that familiar with them. I've read like little bits online, but I'd love to read like a new, you know, a rebranded version of them or something. I bet there's one out there.
I've never read any actually, so that's something I definitely want to put in my repertoire of now that I'm getting into more gothic reads. Something else that I've heard so much about is Varney the Vampire.
I was just thinking of Varney. I've tried to read Varney, but I haven't gotten very far in it because it is so long.
Is it long?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I've thought about it and looked various times at buying a copy, and I'm like, oh, I just don't know if I can do it. It doesn't seem like it's aged. You know, like certain things, they're there because they're just part of canon, they're part of vampire literature, but maybe you should read it for us, Edie, and you can give us the kind of clip notes.
I got so far in it, and some of the characters got so tedious that I'm like, I don't know if I can do this anymore, but I may try again sometime.
Yeah.
Have
so
all of
I
you read
guess
Carmilla?
Yeah,
Yes.
I just finished rereading it actually,
it's
and
brilliant.
it's
It really
so
is
good.
brilliant.
When you compare it to this,
Mhm.
like how this meanders and the lack of atmosphere in the love story, like I think Carmilla is the exact opposite. It's so concise for its time. I was really surprised at how pacey it is and how much is packed into a really short novel.
Well, and it's funny because, usually when we do book discussions, like Amy, I've been on a couple of yours, I've done a couple of my own. It's not hard to fill an hour with discussing a book, but I already feel like for this one, we've already said everything. Like it was very shallow. It was very, not a lot going on until the very end. So it's kind of one of those things. I feel like even in this discussion, and like not to you guys, but even the amount that you would have to discuss is almost like the beginning of the book, where it was like almost like pulling teeth. Like, what can I talk about in this book other than Christine needed a slap, didn't like Raoul, using Sharon's words there, didn't like Raoul, Phantom. I think, Phantom, they did their job with that, but that was pretty much it, and so we can talk a little about Varney the Vampire or Carmilla, which I just finished rereading. So if we've all read it, you're talking about something that was around the same time period. Not really. This one's quite a bit later, but something
It's
that was
not as
super
atmospheric though.
What's
Carmilla
that?
isn't as atmospheric as a Phantom of the Opera though. I don't think there's not as much I don't know, there's no opulence, there's no gothic in Carmilla, whereas this is just oozing atmosphere. I think it's more atmosphere than anything else. But
And
Carmilla isn't.
Maybe with Carmilla, what I'm finding that I'm attracted to maybe is the eroticism of it. Maybe that's what I'm feeling that's creating the atmosphere for me.
It feels very intense, I think, to read Carmilla. You really feel what those characters are feeling. And I was quite surprised at how far it went too. It didn't really shy away like a lot of literature in the day. Like I think Dracula, I always read like eroticism between the lines that isn't there. Like, Jonathan Harker and Dracula, you're like, the sparks between those two that are there but not there. Whereas Carmilla actually did it. It's on the page. You don't have to read, it's not a modern reader reading something into it, which I think is pretty bold. And I was surprised it was a man, actually. I assumed Sheridan was a woman, like thinking of Sheridan.
Me too.
It felt like something a woman would have written in the day and she would have been told, no, women do not write such literature. But it was a man. I was quite impressed, really.
Well, and I mean, we all know, and even talking about in Phantom, like the author's interpretation of women, they're gonna write them as the shallow damsel, not too much going on there, whatever. So the difference of in Carmilla, the way he writes women and the eroticism is right on the page, and these, I mean, it would have been extremely taboo back then. So it is kind of a surprise that I'm sure Fanu or La Fanu would have been way ahead of his time.
Mm-hmm. The fact that they're girls as well rather than women, is interesting too.
Yeah, it's
they're
like
quite young, aren't they? They're very young.
I think so. Yeah.
Well, apart from Carmilla, who's ancient.
Yeah. presents as young. I always struggle with this with vampire characters. I always describe them as young in like early drafts, and then I look and think you took out 500-year-old vampire. Never read it. It's hard to describe vampires. I was just thinking about Bram Stoker too. I feel like his portrayal of women is quite interesting because, like, Mina, in my opinion, is the strongest character in the book and the one with the most agency and interest about her. Whereas Lucy kind of falls prey to the poor Lucy deserves so much better. She falls prey to the kind of perceived female qualities of the time. And I think Carmilla kind of has some of the characters have that dimension to them that Lucy did, like when she turns vampire and she goes a bit predatory. But yeah, I always find it interesting female characters, especially from this time period, written by men. Especially when you don't see the values of the time creeping in, and when you do, it's interesting to me.
I wonder if it also has to do with culture, since this was written, in France, whereas Dracula's written in England. And where was Carmilla written? Was it also written in England?
Irish, isn't it?
Yeah, I was just thinking that. I think Lefany might be Irish.
Okay.
Sharon, are you still on? Because you'd probably know.
Sharon, honestly, is such a wealth of knowledge. She'll just casually drop in how, she has this experience. Like, Sharon has done everything.
Well, and it's like because I met her through doing your lives, and she always just has this, I don't know, wonderful wealth of information to provide no matter what the topic is. Disabled people were hidden away or institutionalized, and I mean back then it would have been either physical or even mentally, right? They would have been institutionalized back in that time period. Through a Glass Darkly is something I have not read yet.
No, not either.
Maybe we're gonna have to put it in this book club.
I was just thinking all of us instantly ordering this afterwards because we trust Sharon.
Sharon, it's your fault. You're going to have to come on the next time we do a conversation about Through a Glass Darkly. Irish living in the U.S.
Okay.
That's interesting. So when you're talking culture, ED, that's quite a kind of blend, isn't it?
I like that comparison, Stoker in England and then LaRue in France, and then we've got Irish living in the US. So culture probably definitely has a lot to do with this conversation when we're comparing books of the time. So how are we feeling about classics in general? Like, I started to get more into classics, I guess, over the last year or so. And I have a problem with them probably because mostly about the way that women are portrayed and how men treat them. So I'm going to continue to read classics because I think they're important. And of course, they kind of pave the way for everything else. But I definitely want to get into some more modern Gothic as well because I think there's some fantastic ones out there. What do you guys think?
So there's a thing in the UK about our literary heritage is on the curriculum, and I work for a curriculum company, so I'm always thinking about it is important to kind of read the books that are the foundations, like say reading Dracula and Carmilla when I'm writing my own vampire fiction seems like essential reading. But I do find some of it too dense to read. Like I tried The House of the Seven Gables recently.
Oh my God, no! I tried. I had to stop.
I was wanting to read that this year. Now I'm a little skittish now.
I read the authors, it's like a foreword or an introduction or something, and I thought, okay, so this is really hard to read, but I'm going to try the book and just see if it's any easier. And when you read a line and you think, I don't know what that said, I'm going to read it again. Nope, still don't get it. So I think if they're dense, I don't persevere. Like I've tried to read Moby Dick and I couldn't do it. But I absolutely love Dracula and I've reread it way too many times probably, and I love the audiobook version. There's a full cast audio that's amazing if you've not heard it.
Yeah,
I loved Carmilla. I loved Rebecca. I've just read Rebecca recently.
Rebecca's
yeah, I read that last year for Gothic Arts. It's fantastic.
Yeah,
absolutely. I read it for the first time last year too, and then I watched the 40s. I think it's the 40s version with Laurence Olivier, who I love, by the way, because he's also Heathcliff.
Yeah, true.
Oh yeah, he is.
I thought both were fantastic.
I enjoy reading Gothic. Some of them just don't work, like the style of writing. Some of them you can just, it takes a few pages and you can slip right in, sort of thing. But I've read some brilliant classics. I've just read Northanger Abbey.
Oh, that one's a good one.
I
Yeah.
read
This
The
is one I'm
Monk
gonna read this year.
a while ago. That was fantastic. I absolutely adored The Monk. I don't know. And Carmilla. There's Dracula. There's loads, and I think that we should read them because they do pave the way to horror today. I think even if they're not scary now, they're still Gothic and they're still there. So I think it's important that we give them a chance again.
Absolutely. And I know for me, I think my favorite Gothic is, it used to be Wuthering Heights when I was younger, but Jane Eyre, I think, is it's my Roman Empire. It's so good.
Have you
So-
read Reluctant Immortals by Gwendolyn Keist?
Oh,
Yes.
no.
Mhm.
Oh, I think you'd love it. It is Lucy Westenra and is it Miss Havisham? Is she the mad woman in the attic? I hate to call it that, but I can't remember her actual name. Which speaks volumes, doesn't it?
Bertha Mason.
Oh yeah, that's it.
There you
Miss
go.
Havisham,
Yeah.
totally somebody different. Yeah, so they are the characters, and they are two immortals living in America, dealing with the consequences of being made immortal by the two oppressive men in their lives. It's really cool. It's a very like feminist. I think I don't remember. Do you remember when it was set, Vix? Is it the summer of '69 or something
It
like
is.
that?
It's in the hippie. It's definitely hippie times, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, I sold.
So it's a really strong sense of time and place. I think it might be San Francisco in the late '60s, from what I remember, or it might be early '70s or something. But yeah, it's really good.
I didn't enjoy it.
Oh, you didn't enjoy it?
No, I think I gave it 3 stars. It was definitely middle of the road. There's problems.
Well, I'm going to give it a go, and then we'll see which side that I come out on.
Fantastic. It should work, but it just didn't for me.
Yeah, I know what you mean. There were bits where I liked it more than others, and I think that it has this thing about decay, which I won't give away to you because it's quite. I liked the way it described being a vampire, but that kind of maudlin quality did slow it down a little bit for me. I think it was something that the author was specifically going for, but it isn't fully my vibe. But there were enough things I liked about it. I'd say I don't really star rate, but I'd give it like 3.5-ish stars. But yeah, I think it's definitely worth trying and see what you think of it, because like the sense of time and place, and to me the modern take on giving these women a voice who didn't have one in their books, I thought was a good enough reason to kind of give it and see what they were like as people.
I read it because it was up for a Stoker. I think last year, wasn't it? That's why I read it.
That's an interesting take. Just trying to give these women a voice. So I might just be interested to read it just for that case. Like I say, especially because Jane Eyre is one of my favorite. Well, it is my favorite Gothic piece. And my husband,
one of the characters infuriating.
What, in Reluctant Immortals? I can't remember.
Yeah.
I read an early copy of it because I interviewed the author. Because it sounds a bit weird. I collect vampire authors. I try and interview like every vampire author that I come across online. So I interviewed her before the book came out. So I must have read it. I can't think, like a couple of years ago now. So yeah, it's not hugely fresh in my mind. And I really enjoyed talking to her too. She's super, super intelligent and knowledgeable about vampire fiction. If you want to watch the interview on my channel, she's great to talk to. And she's very cool. You know, some people you talk to and you're like, you're just so cool. Like, I'm never ever going to be as cool as you. She's just really poised and together. Like,
you know what's funny is when I discovered Vix's channel, and I was like, this is a cool chick. I want to be just like her.
I'm a dweeb.
I think we're all a bunch of nerds anyway.
I'm a nerd.
So. Gothic short stories are more digestible. This is true. E.F. Benson, M.R. James. I want to read more of M.R. James.
I've not read either. I need to like take note of these. I'm going to go through the comments afterwards and write all these books down.
I read Christmas, I think, Whistle and You'll Come to Me around Christmas time, because it's a Christmas classic in the BBC do stuff, don't they? and I did read it. They're quite creepy little shorts.
Yeah, that might be. I definitely want to put like a short story collection in for the book club one of these days. I think that would be interesting to discuss too. But next month, I haven't released it publicly yet, but my patrons did vote, and we're going to be reading The Shape of Darkness by Laura Purcell.
Ooh, that sounds good.
And she's the author of The Silent Companions, which is probably her most famous work, one that I still haven't read, which is blasphemous, I know. But I'm super, super excited to read this one because she does write atmosphere very, very well.
She's just the epitome of gothic modern to me.
Yeah.
She's fantastic. I love her. I love her.
Read any of them. Which one should I read first, Vix? Like
Silent
which
Companion. You'll be ruined by Silent Companions.
Amy, maybe we should buddy read Silent Companions together.
Yes, let's do it. Yeah, that would be amazing. What did we buddy read? We buddy read something we were super excited about. I don't remember what it was, and it really let us both down.
We tried to read the House of Night, the first book in the House of Night series.
Oh yeah, that was.
Remember?
It was. Oh, some books that have not aged well. They really ticked every box that you don't want to tick in a book. Like, I can't even go into it. The way the teenage girls talk to each other was just really terrible, and it was all based on like Native American magic in inverted commas, which didn't read well. And apparently the authors have now edited them. I don't know what they've taken out, but the ebook versions have been edited, and then I think the idea is that it'll go into the print versions too. So I would like to give them a try with the edited modern lens. I don't really know how they got through, because I'm not generally easy to offend with books. Like, I tend to see them of their time and stuff like that, and it really offended me. Like,
I'm usually the same way. Obviously, like, I read a lot of Christopher Pike and stuff like that. That you read something and it's like, wow, that was 90s, right? But this particular series that we tried to reread, or it was a reread for me anyway. I was like, I just couldn't get past it. It was just over and over.
I think they were early 2000s, were they? They were certainly around the time of Twilight, like maybe just after the first Twilight book. And yeah, I would say read the new versions if you can. I bought secondhand versions thinking I'd been so thrifty, and didn't work out.
I bought them secondhand as well and ended up reselling them. So I was just like, no, I'm done. House of Whispers was the other Laura Purcell that I read last year. And it was okay. But what really did it for me was her atmospheric writing. So I'm really excited to pick up The Shape of Darkness. And then Amy will talk about doing a buddy read of The Silent Companions, because I feel like I'm one of the only people who hasn't read it yet.
I'm going to read it.
Yeah, I know. I felt like ashamed to admit it.
That's it. We're doing what, 3-4 way buddy read now?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Let's do this.
50 Gothic short story collections, including some rare female writers. I want to hear more about this, Sharon.
I want to hear about these rare female writers.
Yeah, please. I feel like, Sharon, we need a YouTube video about that, please, if possible.
Yes, please. Haven't read any Purcell yet. Looking forward to next one. I'm really looking forward to reading her as well, because I think we'll have lots to talk about. And so that's the pick. We're in February, so that's the pick for March, and I'll be putting out the poll for April here shortly as well. So the February pick is Bluebeard's Ghost. I haven't read it yet. I'm saving it for the end of the month, but I know there's been some fiery conversations in my Discord about it. So it'll be interesting, because I think a lot of people have a lot of thoughts about that one. So I'll be interested in. Have you guys gotten through that one?
No, not yet.
No, I haven't got to that one at all.
I'm reading Nina.
Oh, thank you. Was that the first time, Vix?
Yeah, I've owned it since it came out.
Oh,
I know that feeling. I don't get offended when people say that, because like people message me quite a lot, like, I'm really sorry I've not read it yet. And I'm like, I am a reader. I understand. I have hundreds of unread books on my shelf, so I get it.
I know. I watched some of your some of your TBR videos. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
we all have giant libraries of books that we just haven't touched. But like, I watch Amy's TBR videos sometimes, and she's like, "This has been on my TBR for 4 months in a row."
Like, I always put 10 books on my TBR, and I know that I'm not going to read 10 books, but I just like to have a lot to choose from. I tend to read between 6 and 8 books a month. And in a real writing month, towards the end of last year, I was writing so much. I only read about maybe 4 books a month. And for me, that's not a lot. And I feel like I'm lacking something when I don't read a lot. So yeah, the books are just piling up at the moment. And I've been trying to read, like, if I get early copies, I try and prioritize those. So that's any new books that come out, they just go on the shelf because I haven't got time to read them. I need to read, if something comes out next month or the month after, I try and read those.
I'm not sure when the release date is. The new Buffy, Kendara Blake.
Oh,
February?
It's April now. It was
sometime in April.
Oh.
Yeah, it was pushed back. It was meant to be January, then February, then April.
She put a post out not that long ago about it too.
Oh, I must have missed it. Okay.
I chat to her occasionally because obviously we're writing our kind of vampire trilogies together, and I interviewed her on my channel a couple of times. And we were saying that our trilogies end in the same month, so we're going to try and do something virtually, I think, to kind of send them off together. I'd love to meet her at some point. I really wanted to, and I once booked to meet her at an event, and I was ill. This was before we started talking. So I came like this close to meeting her and didn't do it. So I'm hoping she'll come to the UK at some point because I think she's great. She's absolutely, again, a person who's really cool and lovely to talk to. But her books, I love them. Especially
I've really enjoyed that whole, what I would consider Buffy season 8, 9, 10. You know, she's really knocked it out of the park because I do struggle with Buffy fan fiction a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So she's done a really, really good job. So, you know, when you meet an author and they write good books, but then they're really cool people, that's really nice too. But your book is coming out in April. If the new Buffy is coming out in April, it's going to be old school April, which I think both will definitely fit into the reading prompts. So I am going to be one of the co-hosts for old school April. So I'll definitely be plugging the heck out of both of those. That's for sure.
That's very much appreciated. It's the only reason I've got to write a trilogy. Like I can't say it enough. Like people talking about them online. I'm with a small publisher. I think they did not expect the first Mina book to kind of take off like it did, and it was just because of the online community. That's it. Like end off, like YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. People talking about books. Like that's what authors need. Like there's no marketing push behind this. It's just the people talking about it.
Yeah.
Definitely. It was great. Definitely for me. I think 3 people had mentioned Mina and the Undead. I think it was Kasha.
Oh.
Somebody else. And I was so like, I'm going to have to buy it now. I'm going to have to buy it.
That's what I like. A bit of brainwashing. Like, we're talking brainwashing earlier, aren't we? People can do that.
That's why they call us influencers, right?
Yes. Book pushers, also known as
book pushers. Book dealers.
Yeah.
Jackie finished Bluebeard's Castle this morning. She's got a little eye roll. So
yeah, I was trying to see that emoji. Like, yeah, that's a good one.
I'm interested to hear all her thoughts of when we do the next live show.
Book.
A Mina Buffy crossover.
If Kendara will write it with me, yes. Like, I don't think Disney would ever allow it, but I can dream.
Hey, you never know. I mean, Mina's pretty cool, so you never know what could happen. You know, reach for the stars, right?
Well, Kendara just got an email out of the blue asking, she was having like the first break, she said, in like 3 years or something from writing. And then the Buffy email comes through and she's like, oh, I'm not having a break anymore. I'm writing a Buffy book. Yeah, it could happen. Like Disney could email me. I won't hold my breath, but can you imagine like Disney just casually email and ask you to write the next Buffy book?
That's it. We're all coming on board to help.
Yeah. I mean, if you can just like mail shot Disney like 20 times a day along with me, then maybe it'll work. But
you never know. All right, everybody. I think we're going to wrap it up here. It's funny because I think 20 minutes of this conversation had nothing to do with the book we read. But, you know, I think that's the theme with some book clubs. When people get together, they talk about the book a little bit, but then we go right on to something else. So I'm totally good with that. So thank you everybody for stopping by. Thank you everybody in the comments. We will be putting up probably today or tomorrow the live show for Bluebeard's Ghost. I still have to read it. If anybody, you guys or anybody in the comments that are booktubers want to come on for the conversation of Bluebeard's Ghost, let me know. I'm sure it's going to be spirited conversation, judging by eye roll emojis and what's been going on in my Discord. So we'll see you guys in a couple of weeks for the next conversation. And of course, Sunday morning sprints will be going on tomorrow morning as well. So thank you guys so much for coming on. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.